Lucy, could you tell us about the note you wrote? Exhibit NAC 10, the note which was found inside your diary.
I just wrote it because everything had got on top of me. It's when I'd not long found out that I'd been removed from the unit, and they were telling me that my practice might be wrong, that I needed to redo all my competencies. My practice might not have been good enough. So I felt like people were blaming my practice, that I've hurt them without knowing, through my practice, and that made me feel guilty. And I just felt really isolated. They stopped me talking to people, and
Do you want to elaborate on some of the things that you've put down in there?
I was blaming myself, but not because I'd done something, because of the way people were making me feel, but like I'd only ever done my best for these babies. And then people were trying to say that my practice wasn't good enough, and that I'd done something, and I just couldn't cope, and I just didn't want to be here anymore.
Do you remember what you wrote down?
I think I do.
It says there, quote, not good enough, you've written and underlined. My colleague is just putting it there in front of you.
Because I felt like I was good enough, but people were trying to suggest that I hadn't been good enough for them.
Which people were they?
The trust and the staff on the unit.
What sort of things were they saying?
Just that I'd been there for a lot of the deaths, and they were going to review all my competencies because at that point they hadn't a clue what had happened, and they wanted me to redo all my competencies in case there was something wrong with my practice and competencies.
You go on to say, there are no words, I can't breathe, I can't focus. Do you want to go through what was going through your mind at that time?
I just felt it was all just spiraling out of control. I just didn't know how to feel about it or what's going to happen or what to do.
When was this written?
I think it was the July time after I'd been removed from the unit.
So, July 2016?
Sorry, yeah, 2016.
And then you go on to say, kill myself right now. Overwhelming fear and panic. Do you want to describe how you're feeling there?
Pardon?
Can you describe to me how you were feeling there?
As I put there, it just felt it was all happening out of my control.
Did you talk to anyone about it?
I went to the GP.
Your own GP?
Yes.
Did you get any help?
Yes, just some antidepressants.
When you say that the trust said they were going to review your competencies, can you be more specific with that?
So when I was removed from the unit, it happened in July, and I met with the head of nursing, and they told me that there'd been a lot more deaths and that I'd been linked to somebody who was there for a lot of them. And they also said that there were some other people that had been flagged as being on shift for a lot of them. And myself and these other people are going to have to be going and redoing our competencies.
What do you mean by competencies?
So competencies to do things on the unit, so equipment competencies and transfusion competencies. We have competencies for most things, clinical care that we give on the unit.
And who assesses those competencies?
The practice education development nurse on the unit.
Right. Okay, so who were those other people?
I was never told who.
Right, okay.
I was just told that the process wasn't happening just for me. It would be happening for a number of people.
What do you think was going on with your competencies up to that point? Were you okay?
Yes.
Did you feel confident?
Yes.
Okay. So on the back of that, did you have any concerns there was a rise in the mortality rate?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me about that. What concerns did you have?
I think we'd all just noticed as a team in general, the nursing staff, that there was a rise compared to previous years. That we were meeting babies that had a lot more complex needs that we weren't seeing a few years ago. And it was talked about that this was something that was unusual.
Okay, and what happened when that was recognized?
Well, I believe things happened behind the scenes with management and the nursing team, and they just carried on and just supported each other and carried on as a team.
Okay. And which point did it all become sort of the extent where you're saying things like, kill myself now, overwhelming?
It was when I was removed from the unit in the July of 2016.
Right. Why, at that stage, did it culminate in those feelings?
Because I suddenly felt that things had been directed towards me.
Why was that?
Because they were saying that they were going to have to review my competencies, so I took it to mean my practice hadn't been good enough.
Did you ever recognize that it wasn't? Did you ever make any mistakes?
No.
So in terms of overwhelming fear and panic, what were you afraid of?
That they were going to think that I'd done something wrong.
Okay. And what would happen if they thought that?
If they thought that I'd done something wrong,
Yes.
that this would happen.
Right.
That the police would get involved and I'd lose my job.
And was it a job that you enjoyed?
Yeah, I loved my job.
In your area, how does competencies or, when people call into question your competencies, how does that lead to a police investigation?
I don't know. I just panicked. I thought if they found my competencies weren't good enough, it had been assumed that I hadn't done, like missed something or not done something that I should have, that the babies had died or become unwell.
Okay. How does that become a criminal matter, though?
I'm not sure. I thought they might refer me to the NMC, and I didn't know if that went to the police.
NMC?
The Nursing and Midwifery Council, who has our registration, who we're registered with. Just panic.
What's the difference between being incompetent, or somebody saying you're incompetent, or criminal in your world?
For the criminal is something that's done deliberately, whereas you're not being competent would be that you're not competent in something that can give you a result that wasn't intentional.
Okay, so in terms of where you say kill myself right now, is that something that you were considering?
Yes.
And why was that?
Because I just felt so isolated and alone and…
Other than the doctor, did you speak to anyone else? Family? Friends?
At the time, because I was told I could only speak to 2 friends, and I didn't want to tell them too much about it. The same with Mum and Dad. Nobody knows.
Did you get any support from work?
They referred me to occupational health and things, yeah.
You mentioned there that you were panicking. What were you panicking about?
Just that it was all out of my control.
So you were panicking about your personal emotions?
Yes.
In your own mind, had you done anything wrong at all?
No, not intentionally. But I was worried that they would find that my practice hadn't been good enough.
What made you think that they might find something that was wrong, or something that you shouldn't have done?
Was more that I was worried that obviously they'd already gone to the lengths of redeploying me and moving me from the unit and banning contact. I didn't know how it was going to go. I didn't think that they'd find that I'd been incompetent, but I was worried that they might try and assume that I had been, just because I was there for all these babies.
Were you there for all those babies?
Yes.
In this note here, you've written down police investigation. Forget. What was going through your mind at that time?
I was worried that the police might be involved.
Like I said before, was there a reason why you thought that?
I think it was just panic at the time.
Another word. Slander, discrimination, victimization.
Because I felt that the trust and the team were trying to imply that it was something that I'd done.
Was there any individuals that implied that?
Yes, all the consultants.
Go on, tell us who they are.
Ravi Jayaram and Stephen Breary.
So, what can you tell us about them?
I just found out that they were the ones who had raised concerns about myself being the common factor in the deaths, and they felt that I'd deliberately harmed them.
So do you want to tell us your professional relationship with Ravi Jayaram and Stephen Breary? Did you have any issues with them?
I felt we'd always had a good working relationship. I've worked more with Ravi than Steve, but that was just through circumstances, who was on shift. But I always felt that we'd had a good working relationship.
So do you think can you give a reason why they might want to victimize you, or point the finger towards you?
It had crossed my mind at times, whether they were trying to put the blame on me for something that somebody else had done.
Are you aware of somebody else doing something?
No.
So, when it crossed your mind, what were you thinking?
If they were questioning my competencies that maybe they were questioning, well, they told me they were questioning other people's as well. Or there'd been a competency issue with somebody else. They were trying to make it my problem because I was there.
So, up to that point that you say they might have discriminated against you or victimized you, you had no real issues with either Stephen Breary or Ravi?
No.
No? No fallings out with them sort of professionally, or
No.
how did you get on with them personally?
I didn't really know them in a personal capacity, only professional.
Professional. Okay, you go on to say in your notes, all getting too much, everything taking over my life, everyone. I feel very alone and scared. When you were writing these down, where were you, these notes?
At home.
Again, did you speak to anyone about this other than the doctor?
No.
Were you particularly close to anyone at work, Lucy?
Yes.
Who was that?
My best friend is Nurse E.
Okay. Did you speak to her at all about how you felt?
Not to the extent of wanting to kill myself, no.
And then you put, how will things ever be like they were? There, on the sheet and overwritten with hate.
How will things ever be like they used to?
So what was going through your mind at that time?
I'd been removed from the unit. I'd been banned contact with everybody. I couldn't see how it was going to go back to how it used to be.
Why did you think that?
Because the redeployment would go on my record, it would affect my practice. Everything.
So, when you were redeployed, exactly what did they say to you when you were removed from the unit? Did they give an explanation?
There'd been an increased mortality rate and that they needed to have an external review done. Until that was complete, they wanted me to redo all my competencies. And then it transpired that they didn't have the staffing to facilitate that, so they redeployed me and said it would be on a temporary basis until the external review had been done, and it was for my own protection.
But you were thinking at this time, things aren't going to be the same again, but you're still employed up to this point as a nurse.
Yes.
Whereabouts was it?
After? When I was redeployed?
Yes.
So the risk and patient safety team in the Countess.
What kind of department's that?
It's still part of the corporate nursing team. They look at incidents and complaints and things that have come into the trust.
Right.
So I was moved into that department. Office-based.
Okay, when you said you were lonely, and if we sort of take out people from the Countess, you didn't have a massive support network. Is that how you felt?
Yeah.
Okay. So was that quite a big thing for you, leaving the unit and being told not to communicate with people? Is that where the isolation?
I'd lost everything. And obviously Mum and Dad were down in Hereford. And I thought we were a good team, regardless of who was my friends. We were a good nursing team on the unit, and I'd just lost that. We were like a little family, and I felt I'd lost that.
But what's the format of this? Obviously these are sort of emotional outpourings, would you say? How would you describe the thing as a whole?
I think it was just a way of me getting my feelings out onto the paper. It just helps me process it a bit more, I think.
Okay, is that all in one session if you like?
I believe so, yes.
Is this how your emotions would manifest themselves? An outlet?
Yes.
Okay, I don't deserve to live. I killed them on purpose because I'm not good enough to care for them. I'm a horrible, evil person.
I didn't kill them on purpose. I felt if my practice hadn't been right, then I'd killed them. And that was why I wasn't good enough.
So, in what way do you think your practice might have been the reason why these babies had died?
I don't know. I thought maybe I'd missed something. Maybe I hadn't acted quickly enough.
Okay, give us an example.
I hadn't played my role in the team. I'd been on a lot of night shifts. When doctors aren't around, we have to call them. There are less people, and it just worried me that I hadn't called them quick enough, or
And you felt evil.
other people would perceive me as evil, yes, if I'd missed something.
I'm a horrible, evil person. That's your take on you?
I think it's how the situation made me feel.
I don't deserve Mum and Dad.
I felt so guilty that they had to go through this, that I wasn't good enough for them or any of them. And it was just all becoming a big mess, and I'd just be better off out of it for everybody.
You put down there, Lucy, that you killed them on purpose.
I didn't kill them on purpose.
Do you believe there's a potential that you caused their deaths?
Not intentionally.
Okay, so do you believe that you were carrying out practices that weren't competent?
No.
Okay, so where's this pressure that's led to having these feelings come from?
I think it's just the panic of being redeployed and everything that's happened.
Okay,
It makes more sense now, but at the time I did think that they might think I was incompetent, that I might have unintentionally caused something.
so you had your competencies reviewed with Yvonne Farmer. Is that on your neonatal unit or your new unit?
We didn't do them on the unit. We just did them in an office environment and went through all the competencies. We didn't do a practical on the unit.
Okay, and that was last year?
Yes.
Okay, so I think just to make it clear what you just said there, it was implied that your level of competency may have resulted in deaths, and that's where you've got all these feelings from. But the trust didn't say it directly, and you didn't think that you failed with regards to your care and the competencies offered to the babies.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, which competencies could you be failing with that would result in a death of a baby?
I suppose the thing that comes to mind was medications, because that's something that we do a lot of on the unit, and the babies are on a lot of medications.
What part of your competency would you be failing with if it wasn't being done correctly? So going through the process of when you administer medicine to a baby, what part of that process would cause the death if it wasn't done correctly?
The wrong drug or the wrong dose?
Are there any other competencies that you might think if you didn't do that correctly, it could cause a problem with the baby?
Maybe if I wasn't competent with a piece of equipment.
And do you feel competent with all the equipment you use?
Yes.
With regards to your parents, you mentioned I don't deserve mum and dad. Is that purely in relation to the problem you were having on the unit and being removed?
Yes.
Okay, so was nursing something that they were particularly proud that you were doing? So tell me about that.
Well, it was. It was a big thing. I was the first person in the family to get into university and to move away and come and do nursing. And yeah, they were really pleased. So I just felt anything like this, well, anything that's in the note, they'd be disappointed. And they were. They were really, really upset about it.
What were they disappointed and upset about?
That I'd been removed from the unit.
Did you need to tell them?
Yeah.
Why?
I didn't want to lie to them.
Okay, the only other thing is that in terms of, I think within that note you were questioning maybe what does the future hold? What were your thoughts around that?
I think I just didn't know what was going to happen. It just all overwhelmed me at the time. It was hard to see how anything was ever going to be okay again.
So moving forward, prior to this point, what did you envisage your life being, moving forward?
I was very career-focused.
Right.
And I was worried that all of this would stop anything like that I'd lose my job, or that it would just be on my record. Other people would change their opinion of me.
Okay, you then go on to say in your notes, Lucy, the world is better off without me. What do you mean by that?
That they'd all be better off without me.
Why?
Because I disappointed them.
And in capital letters, I am evil, I did this.
Because that's how it had all made me feel at the time.
That you'd done something wrong?
Yeah, not intentionally, but I felt if I'd done something, if my practice wasn't good enough, or people didn't think I'd done something in the right way, then it made me an evil person because I couldn't do the job properly.
I'm an awful person, and I pay every day for that right now.
Because I felt like I was having to pay for something that I didn't do. Being away from my job and my friends, and having to go to a new area where I didn't know anyone.
So, this is all how others are making you feel, and how you are feeling yourself.
Yes.
I'll never have children or marry. I'll never know what it's like to have a family. What did you mean by that, Lucy?
Just that I'd never meet anybody, and therefore I'd never have a family.
Why did you think that?
Because nobody would want to. If you say to somebody you had to be redeployed, then people make assumptions, don't they? And if my practice had caused these problems, then I wouldn't deserve to have children myself.
Purely because you'd been redeployed off one unit?
Yes, because at the time it was huge.
You then put down, I hate myself so much for what this has. I did this. Why me?
Again, I was made to feel I had done it through not being competent.
Did what?
Well, did something that had led to these babies collapsing, dying.
Did you ever consider that it might have nothing to do with you or your incompetency?
Not that moment in time.
Okay. What about now?
No, I don't feel it is my competencies.
So what changed between these kind of thoughts and now, that you're confident that your competencies weren't lacking enough to cause any serious collapse or death?
Time. And I've redone my competencies and had that grievance procedure, and nothing was sort of raised through that, or any of the other investigations that have taken place to sort of suggest that I'd been incompetent in something. Sorry, that I hadn't been competent in something.
No hope, despair, panic, fear, lost. Is that how you felt? You had no hope?
It just made me feel like no hope for anything, yeah.
If you knew that you'd done nothing wrong?
Well, at that point I was made to feel that maybe I had, so I was worried that maybe I had in terms of my practice and my competencies.
Who made you think that?
The trust.
Has anyone ever said that you have done something wrong?
I found out via the grievance procedure and the Royal College of Nursing that some of the consultants had made comments.
I did this. Why me? What does that refer to?
That I just caused the disappointment.
What's the why me?
I felt, well, why was it happening to me? Because at the time they were saying that I was a common feature, but so were other staff.
Okay.
But then it was only myself that was redeployed, so obviously. But why me? Why is it just me that it's happening to?
What was the I did this?
The upset and everything that I caused those people, I felt that it was me, not intentionally, but through that situation, through the redeployment.
Okay. What made the first part of 2016 so challenging then?
Well, just reflecting all the year that we had had before. And I think it just affected morale on the unit. We were all feeling, it's a shock. We're not used to deaths like that. And when you're involved with them.
Okay. At which point did the unit start to feel like that?
I'd say about earlier in the year, perhaps January.
January. Why particularly then? What had happened?
I'm not sure specifically. It's just with it being the new year and things. People were just hoping for a better year, and then things happened again.
Things happened again. What do you mean?
We continued to have sick babies and lost some babies.
Were there any in particular that you lost that you recall?
When? At that time period?
Yes.
I can't remember specifically then, no.
When you say we, you refer to we were feeling quite low. Who were you referring to as the we?
The nursing team.
Who do you class the nursing team as? Everybody?
Yes, the nurses and the nursery nurses on the unit.
You talk about the babies being specifically sick. What was the difference from another year?
I think we were seeing more babies who had complex needs. We were having babies with chest drains that we don't get very often. Babies with stomas that we don't care for a great deal. We had quite a few that were quite extreme prem babies with congenital abnormalities, a lot of twins, and then we had the triplets.
In terms of emotional outlets for coping, your coping mechanisms, what would you use?
Usually just talking things through with the team or with my friends.
Is this an emotional outlet? Doing things like this?
Yeah.
Right, okay. Do you use social media and stuff?
Yes.
And that's the way that you use to speak to your friends?
Some of them, yes.
Okay, we'll take a break there, and I think the time is 24 minutes to 9. The interview is concluded.